But before we do that, I want to set the groundwork a little bit, and I'm going to do a little bit of review just from what we've done the past few weeks. And the first thing I just want to remind you guys, I love the way that Crystal drew this last week, that here's our child, and these are the boundaries that we set. And when our kids are little, it's pretty easy to keep those boundaries because we're bigger than they are. And we control what they do, what they eat, when they wake up, when they go to sleep. And so, but our job is to teach them through relationship what it means to have a relationship with God. That's what we're teaching them. But a lot of the focus is on just behavior and having a good relationship with mommy or daddy and being able to talk and being able to share. And so the kids are bouncing off of these boundaries. They're trying to figure out where their boundaries are. But the goal as a parent is to bring them closer in through relationship so that by the time they reach this point where these boundaries, you don't have control anymore like you ever did. That's a lie. But by the time they hit here, they're 13. And they can go way out here if they want to. But by this time, you've already trained them that the most important thing is that they have a relationship with God. And so they're setting their own boundaries now. And that's the goal of parenting. So you've got a handout, and I've got some fill in the blank stuff today. So you might want to have a pen ready. And this is still review from what Crystal was talking last week. I just had this picture come into my mind that I wanted to draw for you guys because it's going to really be important that you understand this as we talk about the practical aspects of discipline today. One of the things that Crystal was talking about last week was this dynamic that we get into a lot of times where here's the law or here are the rules. And if my bent is a parent that I have to have control, then one of the thing that's gonna be keeping this cycle going is punishment. I'm gonna be, hold it, I can't write and talk at the same time. Okay. If this is one dynamic that you can get into as a parent, where you're trying to enforce the law or enforce the rules, and the reason that my child is going to obey me is because if they don't, there's going to be punishment, it's going to be painful, it's going to hurt, and I'm doing that because I have to maintain control. And the emotions that go around in this cycle are fear and anger. The child obeys because they're fearful of the pain, they're fearful of the punishment. And I, as a parent, am fearful that my kids are not going to follow the rules, or I'm afraid that I'm going to lose control. So this whole thing is motivated out of fear and a need to control. And if you have a lot of anger or fear in your household, then chances are, in some ways, you're caught in this loop. Okay, that was a big key for me to realize that something was not right, because in our household there was lots of fear and there was lots of anger, and I knew that wasn't the way God didn't have that kind of relationship with me. Why would I have that kind of relationship with my kids? So if you have this kind of dynamic going in your family, eventually what it's going to produce in your kids, instead of producing what we want as parents, we want obedience and we want respect and we want honor, but this thing will produce rebellion. And those kids that grow up in this, they're the ones that when they are outside of their parents' control, go way outside the boundaries because they've been raised in this. And there's a lot of bad fruit. Rebellion, hard-heartedness, anger, fear are all over here. So what we want to do is we want a different kind of cycle. And this cycle is the one that I believe the Lord it has with us. And it's based on relationship. And over here, instead of punishment, you've got discipline. And discipline kind of has even a lot of times when people say they're going to discipline their kids, what they really mean is punishment. But when I say discipline, I don't mean punishment, I mean training. And we're going to talk about that in more detail here in just a minute. But the thing that keeps that cycle going is love and faith. Okay, because as a parent with this cycle, everything that I'm doing with my kids, I'm not going to jeopardize this. I'm keeping this relationship open with them. And everything that I do is based on the love that I have from God and to God, and it's based on the faith that I have in God, that I believe that He's made me the parent, and He's giving me the ideas, the tools, everything I need to be able to know how to do this. What do my kids need? So, and in the same way, the kids, I have faith in my kids. I have faith that they are listening to God, hearing God, that I'm bringing them up in that way, that they have answers to the problems that they're facing, and that I have faith in them. I have faith to release them. And so the end effect of this is that you have trust. I mean, love, number one. And you have kids that love God, that love you, and that love each other. Trust, faith, those things that we service. You have kids that want to serve and that understand the value of serving. So I just have a question to pose to you guys to start off. What really gets you? What is it that, those of you that have kids, what is it that your kids do that just sends you like over the top? Over the moon, talking back.
Scream, don't answer me.
Don't answer you, screaming. Those are good answers.
The short one-word answers.
Yeah, because for me, that was disrespectful. That would put me over the moon. Anytime, anything like, oh no, you are not gonna talk to me. Don't you roll your eyes. I mean, that was like, okay, that was the last. That would just. Okay, if you have one of those things, if it's whining, complaining, those are biggies for me too. Maybe you have more than one. I'm just saying, every one of those things that you have is like a big red button right here in the middle of your chest. And your kid emotionally really knows what that button is. So when they feel stressed and when they feel emotional and they feel like life is too hard, all they need to do to get you in the same boat with them is push that button. And they know exactly what that button is. And anytime that they feel out of control and they want you to be out of control too, they can just push that button. And if they can get you to lose control, then they have just leveled the playing field in their mind. There were days where, I know now because my kids are older and they still talk to me, but when they were younger, Martha and Hannah have admitted that there were days when they would get up and say, let's just see what we can do to Mom today. And they would gang up on me. And so, whatever they did, the other two are going to follow, right? Because it's fun to overwhelm Mom. And there's 4 of them and 1 of me. And I had a lot of buttons. So it was really easy to get me going. And before we found out about this process that I want to talk to you about today, there were also days where they all wore jeans, and sometimes they wore their sweatpants under their jeans. Because my red button, once it was pushed, there was a lot of yelling and a lot of me chasing them around with a wooden spoon. And so they just wore extra padding. So it didn't hurt. Yeah. So, your kids can outsmart you. Because emotionally they're real, you may know algebra and they may not, but emotionally they will be your equal. And probably they're further ahead of you than you are, because the kids they pick up on emotional issues so quickly, and we're designed as human beings to be attuned that way. And so I want out of this cycle that is fear and anger and manipulation. This is manipulation. And manipulation is the same thing as witchcraft. So if you're doing this with your kids, there's going to be a lot of bad fruit in your family. So, you have a scripture there. It says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. Because fear has to do with punishment, and the one who fears punishment has not been perfected in love. We love because he loved us first. And I just want to say quickly that, just to reinforce that Jesus is he's our model, he's our goal. You know, when we couldn't come to him, he was the propitiation, he was the ransom. He laid down everything. He made the first move to make that relationship possible with us. And then our part, once we realize that and we come to him in love and we have that, our part is to have this one heart relationship with him, where I know that he knows what's best for me, and that I always want to listen to him, and I always want to do what he says, even if it feels hard and even if I don't understand. Isn't that the same thing that we're trying to instill in our children? That we want our kids to know that I am your mom, I love you so much that I will go the extra mile for you every time. But I want you to know that I have your heart, and that you can trust me, that I'm going to always do what's best for you. I'm always going to be ready to listen to you. And that same relationship that I have with Jesus, then I'm reflecting to my kids. You know that your kids are going to understand God through the kind of parent that you are. The kind of parenting model that you set up in your home is going to be their first impression of what God is, of who God is, and of how he loves us. And so I don't want to place a heavy burden on you, because all of us as parents make mistakes. And that's another place where I have come to faith that, yes, I have made mistakes with my kids. All of my kids have had freedom prayer. Okay, thank God. God's bigger than my mistakes, okay? I'm not going to live in fear of making a mistake. I'm going to parent with my whole heart, as hard as I can, and I'm going to leave my mistakes up to God. But I'm always going to be willing to change, to do better, to listen to God, to be a better parent. I still today am still parenting my children, and I'm still learning and still trying to do a better job. And I just think that's just that's a good thing to pass on to our kids, because that's what I want them to know, that there's no mistake that they can make that's going to separate them from my love for them, and that they can make lots of mistakes, and I'm not going to condemn them. I'm going to help them find a better way to overcome the mistakes that they've made. I'm going to try to help them. I'm in partnership with them. I don't want my kids to be afraid of making mistakes, and I'm not going to be afraid of that either. So one of the things about this kind of discipline, this kind of relationship and faith and love, is that remember that scripture in Deuteronomy where we talked about it's repetitive. You know, he said, train your kids as you go down the road, as you walk, as you do it's repetitive. Okay, so Helen is about 4. And we had sippy cups that didn't have the little stopper in there. So if you turn them upside down, stuff's going to drip out. It's not going to pour out, but it's going to drip out. And so Helen was my child that I had a lot of conflict with early on, because Helen has very clear ideas about the way that life should be, and she thinks she's right. And so there were days when it would just be, the contest would be on from the moment her eyes were open. You know, the war is on. And so one day she had her sippy cup. It's got juice or milk in it, I don't know what. And we have linoleum. At that time we had linoleum in our kitchen and carpet in the living room. But it's one big kind of open room. There's no real doorway. There's just this carpet and linoleum. And so she takes her milk, her juice, and she starts to walk to the living room. And I said, no, don't take your juice into the living room. No, I said it this way. Don't go into the living room with your juice. So she goes to the edge of the linoleum, and she takes her cup, she goes, because I didn't say not to do that. She's technically in the kitchen. But she's dumping her juice on the carpet. Okay, so you can't let that go. Even here, because she's looking at me like, what are you going to do about it? I didn't break the rule. But that wasn't my heart. And the way she was looking at me and the way she was doing that, it was obvious that she understood that that was not my heart. She knew better than to do what she was doing. One of the things God showed me with Helen, I felt like a mean person a lot of times dealing with her. But God told me that when she did stuff like that my reaction had to be immediate and swift and probably painful on her part. That's not the law, and that's not control. It's not because I wanted to have control over her. But I just knew that God had told me I couldn't let her do that because she was trying to establish control over me. She was trying to figure out where those boundaries were. And so one of the things that we learn to do in situations like that, because that is a situation that can immediately make me really angry. And so I just had to, as God is my parent, like God and I are having this discussion, it's like, all right, God, I don't want to allow Helen to make me angry. I mean, that would say that she's more powerful than you are, that she has more power over me than you do. The Spirit of God lives inside of me. I can't let my 3-year-old make me angry. I mean, that's ridiculous. And so Helen did that. It's like, okay, you know what? This lesson right here is going to get to be repeated 1,000 times. This little lesson right here, I'm going to get to do this over and over and over, probably all day today. So it doesn't do me any good to be angry about it. Just settle down and do the hard work. It's like, all right, Helen, you know that's not what I meant. So sippy cup gets taken away. She's yelling and screaming. I'm calm. I either have to pick her up and take her, because what we did is when something like that happened, the kids had to go sit on their bed. Or they had to go sit on my bed because there were less distractions in my bedroom than there were in theirs. So if I put them in their room, they're going to be playing, right? So we had a place in our house where they had to go sit where it was quiet. They were removed from everybody else in the family, and there was nothing else to distract them. Because what I wanted them to do was to go to this place and to think about why they were there. Why am I isolated now from the rest of the family? Why did I get my juice taken away? And I want them to be praying and saying, God, what's going on with me? Why did this just happen? Why am I back here? Just you and me. This is a time for them to be just God and them. But it's also a time for me to diffuse that situation for a minute so that I can get some control, so that I can go to God and say, I want to strangle her. And God's like, no, you can't do that. And it's like, all right, God, you're right. I set aside those emotions. What is it about Helen? What is going on with her that she has to push this button over and over and over again? Show me, God, what's happening? Why is this happening? What do I need to do? When Helen was a little bit older, there was she was probably elementary school, probably like older elementary, 3rd or 4th grade. Helen's always been kind of temperamental, which I understand because Helen and I are so much alike. That's true. When she did the juice thing on the rug, one of the times when I was praying to God, I was saying, God, what are you doing to me? You gave me this child. I mean, she's, like lots of emotion here. And she fell asleep that day. She's taking a nap, and I'm watching her sleep. And she's so adorable when she's asleep. And I was just praying for her, and I was praying for me. And God answered my question and said, she's just like you. And I gave her to you to serve you. And it's like in the moments when things were very stressful and high emotion between me and Helen, I would remember that word that God gave me, and it helped me come back to what was really important and what the goal really was. So she's about 4th grade, 3rd or 4th grade, and she's been angry for a long time. day after day. Helen is angry. And by this time, I'm good. I mean, as a parent, I'm ready for the task, okay? And so I have not lost my cool, and no matter how angry she is, I'm returning a kind word, a gentle word. I'm telling the other kids, we've got to be patient with her because, you know, I mean, you have to remember as your kids get older, there's lots of chemicals going on too. There's lots of hormones and that kind of thing. And that's a genuine weakness because they don't know what's going on and you don't either. Everybody's on the steep learning curve. And so just chill, you know. And so finally, though, I mean, this anger is just not budging. I mean, Helen is just angry. And I had sent her to a room and I'm praying. It's like, man, God, I don't know. I don't know what to do now. I've tried everything. I know all those things you taught me to do. I've done them, and now I'm stuck. And God said, go talk to her. I was like, okay, what do I talk to her about? He's like, I'm not going to tell you. Just go talk to her. Okay, so I get to put into practice this faith thing, you know. So I just go in Helen's room, and she won't make eye contact with me. Like, she's looking this way, and I'm over here talking to her, and she won't look at me. And I don't make her look at me, you know, because what's that going to do to the relationship, right? So I don't even really remember what I said. I'm just trying to engage her in a conversation. I started asking a lot of questions, which is something if you're like me, that didn't come naturally for me. That was something I worked really hard at, asking relational questions. And I've got some of those in your notes to kind of help you. But I just started asking her questions. Why do you think this is, you know, eventually it's like, why do you think you feel the way you do? You know, I probably start off with, tell me what you're feeling right now. You know, what's going on? Why? We just started talking. And she's giving me those short answers, you know, 2 or 3 words, 1 word, I don't know, you know, those kind of things. But in the midst of this dialogue, even though it's not really that productive, I heard the Holy Spirit say, she doesn't want to be angry. It's like a light bulb. And I said, Helen, I don't think that you want to be angry. I think you just don't know how to stop. And her eyes fill with tears, and she starts to cry. And it was just that word of knowledge to be able to break that thing between us so that we can come back to relationship. That conversation, though, what I want to tell you, is part of this discipline and training. Because I'm training her how to relate to her emotions and how to take those emotions to God, how to handle those. I'm training her how to handle those. I'm not just trying to beat the bad stuff out of her. So a lot of this training and discipline is much as what you're trying to get, the bad behavior that you're trying to get rid of. Man, you're inputting all kinds of stuff, you know. We read aloud to our kids a lot. I read aloud a lot to them, and Chris read aloud. That was just an idea that God gave us because we felt like we needed to train our kids how to listen, how to be good listeners. And so we would pick some good book that we were interested in, that we thought would be good, and we would read it. We read books about missionaries, but we read books that were just stories. We read Lord of the Rings. When Helen was so young, she didn't even know what was going on, but she had to sit there and listen anyway. And we would read, and then we would talk about the characters, and we would talk about their good qualities and their bad qualities, and maybe what they could have done different. We read lots of Bible stories together. My kids had lots of Bible stories, and that was just something that we did because it was what I was putting into them, what we were talking about. I remember one morning we were supposed to do a spelling lesson, and some spelling word got us into this discussion about heaven and what heaven was. And for the next 20 minutes, forget spelling. I mean, who cares about spelling? We talked about what heaven might look like. We just sort of dreamed about what heaven would be like. And that was a really cool discussion because I got to share with my kids what I think, how exciting heaven's going to be and what I think it's going to be. And so, interesting, recently one of them mentioned that. They still remembered that conversation that we had probably 10 years ago. So let's look at some of the practical things, the process. I already told you the first thing that Chris and I would do is to try to diffuse that emotion give them a chance to think about it, and you have a chance to think and pray. And so, if like with Helen, when she was really young, I couldn't really let her out of my eyesight, and you may have one like that, so maybe you'll have a chair in the corner. I don't know what it's going to look like for you, but just where they have to go, I think it's really important that they need to go, because this is their problem, not your problem. This is their problem. And you're helping them come up with a solution that's going to work for them, but they need to be engaged in this process. And so they go to their room, I go to my room, we pray, and then after a few minutes, we come back and we talk about it together. Now, after some thought and prayer, you're going to talk to your child, and lots of questions. Danny Silk has a great teaching called Loving Your Kids on Purpose. You can get it online. You can order the CDs. It's even in a book form if you prefer reading a book. He's got some great insight into this, and I highly recommend that. But he has these communication one-liners, and I love these. I know, probably so, that could be, I don't know, nice try. And I love those, because this is when your kid is angry and you're in there talking to them, but they don't want to. Like, well, why do you think you're here? I don't know. Well, what do you have to say about clobbering your sister? I don't know. Why did you do that? I don't know. Now, when I got that, I would say, well, that's fine with me. If you need some more time, I'll just leave you back here to think about that some more, and I'll go and do something I need to do. And that was like torment for Helen. Helen was like, no, I'll talk. Because she knows I'm not coming back for another 20 minutes, And so that was how we got around that. And then, so if your kid says, you're the stupidest parent ever, you can say, probably so. I mean, don't take that bait, right? Because they're trying to bait you into the same emotional level they're at. And so those questions, in fact, my kids that I know, it's like, Mom, this just isn't working. I mean, she's so annoying. There's no way I can get along with her. I know. I hate it when you do that. I know. So, that's those answers. And for me, the hardest part was not to be sarcastic when I was doing it. Because they will know if you're sarcastic about it. So, those answers, though, are meant to take the emotion out of that and to bring it back on the child. That, yeah, as a parent, I am completely with you. I understand how you feel. You probably have reasons for feeling the way you do, and I want to know what those are. And I want to help you come up with a solution, because the way you just solved this problem is not acceptable, or whatever. Okay. So here's some questions that you can ask to try to get them going and talking to you. How's that working out for you? Mom, she made me so mad I had to kick her. And how's that working out for you? If the roles were reversed, how would it make you feel if you did this, or if someone treated you this way? How would you feel if all of a sudden your sister kicked you? So you're asking questions to try to get them to work out this problem. What do you think you should do as a kid gets older and they really have a relationship with Jesus? I mean, I got to where I could ask them, what do you think God would think about that attitude? I mean, how do you think Jesus thinks about that attitude you have right now? I don't think he likes it very much. Yeah, I don't think he does either, And so if you have a relationship with your kids where they know that you're not going to condemn them, and they know that you're for them, they will open up to you and tell you what's in their heart. You can get them to open up, and that's what you want. Okay, so the number 4, I think it is on there, is understand the problem. You're asking these questions and you're trying to get dialogue with your kid, because you need to understand the problem. And you may not understand how they're looking at this situation. You may not understand something about why they're so emotional at this point, like Helen with her anger. She was angry, she felt angry, she didn't know how to get out of this angry feeling. And up until that point, I wasn't really helping her because I didn't understand. But once I said, Helen, I don't think you want to be angry, then she was able to let her guard down and say, yeah, you're right. I just don't know how to stop because it hurts. And then we were able to get to the hurt. But if I never realize that that's the problem, and I just try to keep attacking this as a self-control issue or something like that, then the problem's never going to go away. One of the things I remember with Martha is like, Martha would never hang her bath towel up. It was always on the floor after every shower. And so, I mean, we did everything we could think of to try to get her to hang up her towel, and it just wasn't happening. And so finally, you know, one day I'm talking to her, I'm like, she goes, Mom, I don't know what to do. It's like, I don't know what to do either. I don't know what to do. She said, I can't remember. I said, that's not true because I'm remembering for you. I even tell you to hang it up and you still don't hang it up. It still lays there. So that's obviously not the real issue. And so we both agreed that wasn't really, forgetting really wasn't the problem because even when I remembered for, she wouldn't do it. And, you know, finally after some talking and asking some of these questions, and I'm trying to understand what the real problem is with Martha, because I know she's capable of hanging the towel up. It came down to, Mom, I just don't believe I'll ever get it right. So if I don't believe I'll ever get it right, what's the point in ever trying anything that I feel like I'm going to fail at? Well, that's a much bigger issue than it's a completely different issue than just being lazy or just not wanting to. That's a completely different ballgame. So I need to understand what that problem is. Your kids need to understand. They're children, they live in the same family you do, but they're kids. They see everything as it affects me. They don't naturally think about anybody else but them, because that's the way children are. And they need a parent to come in and say, but honey, when you say things like that, don't you understand that hurts your brother's feelings? Can't you understand how he would feel? I mean, if I walked in here and said, blah, 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 to you, how would you feel? That, you wouldn't say that to me. No, I wouldn't, because it would hurt your feelings. Kids don't think that way. You have to tell them. That's understanding the problem. See, when you said that to your brother, you made your relationship with him, it's like putting a big wall between your relationship, between you and him. And yesterday you guys had a great day together. You played and you had fun. But when you say those kind of things and you hurt your relationship, you can't have fun with the other person. You have to explain those things so that your kids understand what the real problem is. The real problem is not that they said something they shouldn't have said. The real problem is that they wounded somebody else. And now something needs to be done. So understanding the problem is a big deal. Let your words be few. When Helen was 3, I was trying to explain why she should go pee-pee in the potty. And she's staying there listening. And I'm talking. And finally she goes, Mommy, you say too many words to me. And she was right. If you don't know what you're doing, you will say too many words. And even a child knows that if you're using lots of words, you really don't have a handle on the problem or how to fix it. So rein it in. You know, when you're in there talking with your child, let them talk. Let them talk. Your goal is to not use many words. Let them talk. And this is a time to reason together and to consider what they have to say. And you want to listen to what they have to say. And I don't really know at that point why. I just know this is an important path for Martha, and Martha won't do it. Martha's a very passive-aggressive child. She's not like Helen, or you can do that. Martha's like, yes, I hear. I'll do my own thing. You know, she doesn't openly defy. She's just going to do what she wants to do. So at 8 years old, she had made a decision that she was not going to memorize those notes. And so we sat down and we considered this together. And I said, Martha, I know you've made this decision. She admitted it. She said, yeah, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. I said, okay, I hope you change your mind. And here's what's going to happen. I go to piano lessons with him, so I'll know if you have improved or not. I want you to memorize the notes. It's important. and you need to do it. And it's a non-negotiable. So if you don't, there's going to be a consequence. And the consequence we decided was that she was going to get pops. And I'll explain those in just a minute. But so every week that she didn't, the first week that she didn't know her notes, she got 3 pops. The next week it was 6. The next week it was 9. And so it just got more painful, you know. The consequences for not memorizing the notes got more painful. Now, looking back on it now, maybe I could have been more creative and I could have given her chores or something else. I'm not telling you that you have to spank your children. That's one of the things that we did. And I want to tell you how we did it. But there's lots of ways to have your child own the problem. By the time we got the 3rd week out and Martha was getting 9 pops for not memorizing her notes, all of a sudden now it's her problem because next week it's going to be 12. And so Martha decided that she better learn her notes. And you know, it's like in 2 or 3 days she had them learned. It wasn't like it was a hard thing for her to do once she made up her mind that that was a good idea. So if whatever the consequence is, you know, whatever the ownership of that problem is, however you get the child to own the problem, let it be their solution and let it be a way that it's their problem and you're not the one being the enforcer. Okay, this is not the enforcer tool because I don't want to be the one that's responsible for them. I don't want to be the one that has to always remember what the rule is and if they follow it. I don't want to be the rule keeper. I don't want to be the rule keeper. I want that to come from them. This is the closest thing that we could find to like a switch because it's real wispy. And if you have a forsythia bush, I've heard that they make really good switches. Instead of chasing my kids around with a wooden spoon, this is better. For one thing, it's not your hand. Okay, and if you're going to spank your kids, please don't use your hand. Because your hand, it should be for loving, for caressing, for blessing, for hugging. Make a separation. I just think that's real important for your kids and for you. It's not mommy that's hurting you or daddy that's hurting you. It's that you made a choice and this is what you chose. And I don't want to do this, but if you know, the way I explain it to my kids is like, even for me as a grown-up, God is my parent. If I disobey him, there's a painful consequence for me. And so this is the easiest way that I can illustrate that to you. If you disobey me, there's going to be a painful consequence. So we had the kids bend over the bed, drop their pants, because that way I don't have to worry about how many layers they're wearing. They had to hold my hand, and then I would what? Okay, and they would know, because we've done this talking, they would know how many pops they were going to get. There was no dancing around or, you know, unreasonable shouting. If they did all that, we stopped and we. The most horrible thing she could imagine was having to sit in her room for 20 minutes and wait for me to come talk to her. And so, you know, God will give you wisdom on what you need to do with your kids. I think the most important thing is, this is not your problem, it's their problem. And you know what? It's okay if they end up failing at that problem over and over and over again. In fact, you should rejoice as a parent if they do. Yay! You lost your temper again! Because it is an opportunity for you to do this training, this whetstone thing, sharpening, training. Because it's not just about them, it's about you. It's about what God's doing with you. He's training you over and over and over again. So rejoice with your kids when they make mistakes, because we all make mistakes. You want your kids to be so afraid that they never risk anything. You want them to be able, your home should be the safest place for them to let their guard down and be who they really are, and have you be able to celebrate that, but also bring in these boundaries. Okay, so let's see, how am I doing on time? I want to open it up for questions, and we only have a couple minutes right now, but I'll be around if you guys want to ask questions between the times you're shifting. I know some of you have to go. Some of you that have to leave right at 10:30, you've got 2 minutes. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask? And, you know, Gabe and Crystal and Neil and Denise, we've all been doing this for a while, so ask us questions.
Alex, how do you discipline when you got young kids, like say you got a 6 and a 4 and a 2 or something like? How do you send a 6-year-old at the room for 20 minutes? What do you do with the 4 and 2-year-old?
Yeah. A lot of times, since we sent the kids, like the older kids that I knew would be okay sitting in my bedroom, they would be back there. If I already had one kid in my bedroom and another kid misbehaved, they sat out in the hallway. So there were times when I'm in the bedroom with the kid and I've got all the other 3 lined up in the hallway. And so this one gets released and they're back out in the house again, and now I'm dealing with number 2 and I hear number 4 and number 1 get in a fight. So, yeah, right, you stay here, I leave, I go out, you 2 sit right here in the hall. If I hear any scuffling or any moving around, that's a pop automatically. And because I want them to know I'm right there, I'm listening. I may even keep the door open so I can see them. I may even bring them in the room so that I'm having a conversation with this child over here on this side of the bed and they're all sitting right over there. Well, all I got to do is look over, you know. I mean, I know there are times when you have to keep your eyes on them all the time. You know, Helen, when she was really young and we started this, I couldn't trust her to just go back to her room because she would play. And so, yeah, you just have to be creative. I'm going to say this, if you've got really young kids, your discipline needs to be swift. Not a lot of words, just you disobeyed. Okay, now we're over. I love you. We're good. Please don't do that again. And so it's like you're training them that if they aren't listening, then, you know, there's going to be a consequence.
Can I share
Crystal,
something
yes.
Yeah. About with Lydia, spanking wasn't always, she was emotional enough that spanking was torture sometimes. And so for her, it was just, she had an attitude problem. So I'd say, okay, you need to go to your room until you're happy. And when you're ready to be happy and have a good attitude, you can come join us. And so I'm not responsible for her bad attitude or punishing it, or she gets to go to her room, make a choice, and sometimes it would take her a while, and sometimes she'd come out with the same attitude and we'd go back in and we'd do it over and over, and sometimes she'd have a spank on the way because she refused to obey, but eventually she would come out and take responsibility for her own attitude, and we were having fun, and I wasn't, see, it's better this way, you know, I didn't have to, you know, be mean about it. She came and enjoyed the family and made a choice, and so that worked a lot, especially when she was 2 and 3 and learning what attitudes are and how to, you know, how to make choices to change it. And
that
so,
still works with teenagers. And your attitude stinks. We're going to watch a movie, but not you.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to be around your attitude. Yeah.
Referring to the pops, when Sarah was little, she didn't get a lot of spanking. She embarrassed me one day in public, and I said, I'm not going to embarrass myself and correct you here, but when we get home, you're going to get a spanking. And so all the way home, she's saying, I'm so excited about getting a spanking. It's been a long time. And so we got home, and I spanked her, and she was still excited. But Max, on the other hand, when I say I'm going to spank you, I'm holding one hand and have the spoon in the other, and he's running me in circles.
Yeah.
And I rarely ever even hit him because I can't catch him. So,
Yeah. That's, I think, yeah, everything, nothing that we did was, once we learned this, we tried to not ever, any discipline that we did was not emotionally, it didn't come from my emotion. It didn't come because you made me so mad, now I gotta chase you around the house, you know. It was like, okay, here's the deal, and we've already talked, and we've had this conversation. Did you have something you wanted to add, Crystal? So, yeah, your kids, God is gonna give you the perfect plan for your kids if you listen to Him. And, you know, a lot of it is just understanding their temperament, understanding with their age, what they're able to comprehend, what they're able to understand.
I think sometimes we underestimate what our kids are able to do. You know, I
Yes.
think the world standard, we all understand that the world standard for our children is really, really low. You know, when Seth went to kindergarten, the teacher told us, you know, we tried public school for that 1 year. And, you know, we were on the fence about whether or not we were gonna homeschool, and God used that to show us that was right for us. And the teacher, we went in, and the teacher said, well, I don't teach them until about 10:30 in the morning. Because I've found in my experience that I can't do anything with them after that. And I said, okay, fine, so can I pick them up at 10:30?
Yeah.
And I'll go, no, they'll be counted absent. So, I'm like, when's the earliest I can pick him up that he won't be absent? 1:15, okay, my wife will be here at 1:15 every day. The point was, is that the world underestimates our kids. If you know, one of the principles of sending them back to the room is also, you know, I think, you know, how many of us think we have ADD kids? Raise your hand. Now, the truth is, most of us do. And our kids are big kids.
That's good, yeah.
That's just kids. They have the ability to do things that we don't think they can do. So if you are saying that my kid runs, I can't get them to sit still, you can get them to sit still. But that may be the first part. Again, it's hearing the Holy Spirit for what's right for your kid, number one. But you can get them to, that may be the first part of where you start. You're going to sit still here. And if they get up after 2 minutes, go back and do it again.
One of the things I did with Helen is I would send her to her room to sit on her bed, and then I would walk out of the room, and I would stand her outside the door, and I'd count to 10, and then I'd be right back. And if she wasn't on her bed, it's like, Helen, what did I tell you? And she would go back and sit on the bed. Like, she just never knew when I was gonna be poking my head around the corner. Now, that took a lot more attention for me, but I was training her to do what I asked her to do. And I didn't get angry with her, I didn't spank her, I was just training her that that's what she was supposed to do.
Well, I think the story you told about Martha and how the discipline progressed, you know, was the same thing with what you were speaking with a minute ago, and that is when you can find a way to put the ball in their court, you know, and say, okay, now, you know, if we go around in a circle again, that's 3, or now we can get through 2, and then we can talk about it. But the more we do this, the more it's gonna be, and it didn't always work at first,
Yeah.
but eventually, because they're smart even in Max's age,
Oh, yeah.
and eventually they start realizing it's worth, you know, minding for a few minutes to get out of having 6 or 8 squats rather than 2.